Good morning. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wellness Wednesday. I hope you are having a fabulous day already this morning. I shared a little joke in my VIP group this morning. And it is, what do you call a camel with no humps? And the answer is hump-free. I'll see myself out now. Anyway, I thought that was a great way to start a Wednesday because it's hump day. If you are here, let me know you're here. If you don't see this till afterwards, hit hashtag replay in the comments. Feel free to make comments, ask questions. Even if you missed the live, this will be here on Facebook for 30 days. And I always have it on my YouTube channel within a couple hours after I go live. So with that said, if you are just stumbling on my page, my name is Donna. I'm a mom, a nana, a girlfriend. I am a wellness advocate. I am studying for my Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling. Very into staying active with jazzercise and line dancing and running. Need more strength training. We know how that important that is, and I've talked about it before. And I started Wellness Wednesday because I've been in a lifelong journey with anxiety and depression. And when I first started Wellness Wednesday, I honestly thought it would look more like a lot more food and exercise tips, and those are important. But what it has turned into is a lot more mindset, because as I grow in my journey, I realize that mindset is really, really kind of where everything starts. In any case, I started Wellness Wednesday because I think that pure wisdom is really important. And I'm not certainly saying that anything I have to say is necessarily wise, but I do know that when we hear the same things over and over and over again, and we know these things, but we don't always do them. And sometimes it just takes the right moment and the right time that it's said, even if we've heard it 100,000 times, for something to click. So that's why I started Wellness Wednesday, so that we could kind of compare notes, share with each other tips and tricks, in hopes that someone who is watching, or even me, I like learning from you. Maybe you'll learn from me. Maybe you'll learn from somebody else that comments or interacts. And that's the whole point. So if you are just stumbling on my page, that's the basic rundown. If you have been following me for a while, then you know that last week I talked about our focus, our tendency to focus on independence and the whole I don't need anybody concept. But that can cost us. That can cost us connection. And I talked a little bit about that last week. I will drop that link to that video in the comments. And the challenge from last week was, have you decided, yes, I have to have it up here because I don't remember everything. Have you decided at any point that you just don't need anybody? And that decision may have been out of strength. That decision may have been out of pride, out of fear. Talked about all of that last week. And while those walls may have served a purpose, my challenge to you is to think about whether those walls were still serving you today. Because most of the time those walls are erected, early on in life. And then occasionally we have to bust out a door, bust down the wall. Most of the time it's more of a bust out a door, right? So that's what we talked about last week. Let me know if you took that challenge and how it worked out for you. If you're not comfortable sharing it publicly, feel free to message me. And as I said, if you're here, let me know you're here. If you don't see this till afterwards, you can still leave comments, questions. Let me know you saw it. And if I don't say anything to you when you say hi this morning while I'm live, it's because Facebook doesn't always show me all the things. So it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's because I didn't see it. And I will definitely respond afterwards. So, on my mind this week, and lately, I'll be honest with you, I'm just coming off of the 10-week school term. My creativity's a little bleh. I've been struggling a little bit with topics lately, but as is usually the case, when I sit down and I meditate and I pray about it, a topic is given to me. And on my mind this week is, can you get good at being unhappy? I mean, how ridiculous is that? Who wants to be unhappy? But you know something? I'm sure we can all think of someone who is always complaining about something, and it seems like they're not happy if they're not. And my personal experience has been, we get better at whatever we practice. So how did I get here on this topic today? Well, summer break again. So the kids are on summer break. And the only reason I can keep track of that is because I have grandkids. The kids are on summer break. And I have also I got my term done a little bit early. So I just have one tiny thing left to do between now and Friday. And otherwise I am on a 4-week summer break instead of a 3-week summer break, which is typically the case. But with the kids being on summer break, and I've talked about this recently too, they are spending more time with friends. They're spending more time with family. They're spending time in camps, activities, sports. And so they're getting exposure to familiar faces, but also new faces. And that also means new attitudes. And I am now, I never used to be, I'm now a huge subscriber to the phrase attitude is everything. We're going to talk a little bit that kind of works in here today. Good morning, Miss Heather. I hope you're doing great today. But I know firsthand how easy it is as a kid to focus on comparison because that's pretty much all I did. So what I mean by that is what little Johnny has, what little Johnny got, what little Johnny got to do, what's unfair, what's different, what's missing. I had a lot of that when I was a kid because I was picked on because we were poor. In the description of that word at the time, we didn't have a lot of money. We lived on government cheese, government milk. My clothes came from yard sales most of the time until I got old enough to start babysitting and then bought my own clothes, because that was the only way I could get clothes that I didn't feel weird in or awkward in. I grew up in a town that was, very have and have not, if you will. The largest bulk of the kids there had, and then there was a sector of us that had not. And the truth of the matter is the sector of us that were have-nots, were probably bigger than I thought, but it felt like we were small, and an awkward minority at the time. So there was a lot of comparison also, absent parent, step family. So I did a lot of comparison. It actually took me until my 40s before I stopped doing that. And I see and hear more and more of that with kids as I spend more time around my grandchildren. Yep, powdered milk and the best melting cheese. To this day, I cannot drink powdered milk. I just can't do it, Heather. But I hear more and more of this with kids especially as I spend time around my grandson, but also hear other people talking about their kids. Because as I spoke about a few weeks ago when I talked about the words we say, I don't think adults are censoring themselves as much in front of children as we used to. And so adults' negative attitudes and reactions and stuff like that towards things are more out loud, if you will. And the kids pick up on that and they parrot it and it infiltrates their childhood, if you will. And so those attitudes kind of get spread around. Next thing you know, you've got grandkids that are popping off with words and phrases that you're like, where did you even hear that? Where did you even get that idea? So I spent a whole lot of my life, obviously, focused on what was wrong, what was missing, what was unfair, what wasn't what I wanted, what wasn't what I expected, and not what I thought was supposed to happen. That as an adult, that turned into something I call destination preoccupation, which I've talked about in the past, where we have a when I attitude towards everything. When I get this, when I get there, when I move here, when this happens, I will be happy. And that can be so very dangerous. And then their expectations are a whole other story. And I've talked about that before too. And this all happened until, and remember, I talked about being repetitive. Sometimes it may sound to you like I'm repetitive, but you may hear me say the same thing several times over several episodes, and then all of a sudden one day you're in the right place where something I say clicks differently. Or somebody else says exactly what I did. This works this way with kids, you know that. Somebody else says exactly what I did, and all of a sudden the light bulb goes on. But I met a friend several years ago who just had a different slant on things. And it was a life-changing moment for me, a life-changing experience for me, probably because I was in the right place and space to look at the way this person approached things and go, that's how I want to be, and that's what I'm going to become. So as adults, basically, we do the same thing. We get into this comparison trap that kids do. Our comparisons just change sometimes. Sometimes we're still, Johnny got this and I didn't get it. And we still have expectations, and we still have, I'll be happy when attitudes. But sometimes just the comparisons get a little bigger. Campers, houses, vehicles, things like that. So-and-so got this, so I need that. And as I said, when I talked about the words we say in front of kids, a couple weeks ago, this is exactly the same concept. The things we complain about and react to in front of others and to ourselves, or say to ourselves, that impacts our attitudes. And then we model that behavior for others, including the kids around us. So, modeling, we can get into the psychological slant and all the science behind that and how psychology started. But modeling is a thing. Kids don't just listen to what they say. They do what we do. They watch what we do. And we do the same thing with others. Just like I just described that friend, I started trying to model myself after that person because they were in a place that I wanted to be. And in that case, that modeling was healthy. But it's not, that modeling is not always healthy, and it's something that we do because we learn that way. So the question here is, what are we training ourselves to notice, or what are we training the people around us to notice? And I've talked about this before too. This boils down, the best way to describe it, the layman's terms, is the red car effect. If I ask you how many red cars you saw on the way to work this morning or on the way to the store or whatever you were doing, you're probably like, I don't know, I didn't notice any red cars. On the way home, because I said that, because that seed is planted now, guess what you're going to do? You're going to notice every single red car on the road. This has been used in a lot of different ways for a long time. But the bottom line is what that equals is, if I'm looking for problems, if I'm looking for reasons to be irritated, I'm going to find them. I'm going to find them all day long. And I can just tell you, you may not have ever seen it, but I am a walking example of how this works. Not as much anymore. So we have the red car effect. When we're talking about what we train ourselves to notice, we have the red car effect. If we look for problems, if we look for reasons to be irritated, that's what we're going to focus. That's what's going to stand out to us. And then, of course, there's the comparison trap. Like I just mentioned, if I look at what everyone else has, and eventually I will begin to feel like what I have is not enough. And then another phenomenon that I like to talk about and that I've personally experienced and that I still experience on a regular basis and see in others is the horn or halo effect. And if you've not heard of this, what this basically means is, and I'll pick on Heather because I know she's watching. Heather, if I like you, I get kind of a halo effect going on, which means whatever you say to me is going to carry more weight with me than anybody else. And I may just even take it at face value and be like, well, Heather said it, so it must be true. But if I don't like you, then I'm going to be focused on the things I don't like. And eventually you could tell me the sky was blue and I would argue with you because what you say doesn't carry the same weight with me. That's a very layman's way to explain it, but it's a thing. So again, back to that, if I look for problems with the horn or halo effect, if I focus on how much someone irritates me, everything about them begins to irritate me. And something that they do or say that normally wouldn't faze me if it came out of a stranger's mouth or if it came out of a friend's mouth is, that's what I'm going to be like, I cannot believe they just did that. Oh my gosh. So that's a very strong thing. So if you haven't followed me for a while, I mentioned this friend, and I was probably, I would say early 40s. I'm starting to lose track of the timeline, but early 40s. And this was somebody I met at a race that I kind of knew through work, but didn't really know her. And she was talking to another friend of ours And so we kind of reintroduced ourselves. And since we now had running in common, the running community is an amazing thing. We just kind of started talking more and started spending more time. And I was finally, apparently, at a place in my life where this person's positive attitude was just contagious. And I hadn't experienced anything like that before because I lived in a negative space and I had destination preoccupation and I was surrounded by negative people because when we live in that negative space, we tend to attract and gravitate towards other people of the same mindset. And when I look back, it wasn't that she was living a different life because she had more or because she did more. It was because she looked at things differently. I can remember, I love to tell the story of a late night after a little bit of drinking, and she was hungry and she wanted a pizza from this convenience store, and she so wanted this pizza and she was so disappointed in this pizza. And it was the first time I ever really saw her get aggravated about anything. And the whole time she was complaining about the pizza, she was still smiling and making excuses for why the pizza might not have been that great. And I was just like, I wanted more of that because I wanted to have a more positive attitude. I was in that place. And then once I began to spend more time with that person, again, if you've been following me for a while, you know, the more I stopped tolerating negativity around me because I craved that positivity and I wanted that. I wanted to be surrounded in it. So again, that's a timing thing because like I said, we can hear the same thing 100,000 times over. And that's why I may sound repetitive sometimes, but this is true. Sometimes it just takes the right moment, the right person, the right frame of mind where something clicks, and that's important. So here's the thing. When we are training ourselves to notice things, if we're going to train ourselves to notice something positive, where I always go back to is gratitude. And I've talked about gratitude before as well, but gratitude to me is so important, and it's so where we start. Gratitude isn't a feeling. Gratitude is a decision that can become a habit if we make that decision enough. But it takes practice. And if gratitude is a habit, well, then negativity can become a habit too, right? So complaining, comparing, looking for problems, flaws, focusing on what's missing, waiting for the other shoe to drop with that whole, yep, there it is, I knew it was coming. So we can't even enjoy a good thing because we're waiting for the bad thing to come on the other side of it. The more we practice those things, the easier and more second nature they become. And they certainly became second nature for me because I started with this trap so young that I did not know anything else. And it's part of what fed my depression and my anxiety. Our brains believe what we tell them. Yes, perspective. And that's the other side of that. Thank you so much for bringing that up, Danielle. And good morning, by the way. So, basically, the more we practice these things, the easier and more second nature they become. And our brains absolutely believe what we tell them. So if we tell our brain that everything is miserable, our brain is now going to scan everything around us for evidence that that's true. What we focus on is what we get. And a lot of people assume that grateful people just wake up that way, that they just magically wake up that way. But that's usually not the case, at least not right away. And it never was for me. I had to work at it, y'all. I had to work at gratitude. Where was I? I lost my spot in my notes. Okay. I have notes. I have an outline. I end up talking way beyond what I have, but I can lose my spot. I have to have y'all, I'm 52. I have to have something to keep me on track here. So again, a lot of people assume that grateful people just wake up that way, but that takes practice. It's a habit. Gratitude is a habit. Gratitude is a perspective tool. There's that word, Danielle. That with practice becomes a routine and a lifestyle, but rarely starts out that way. Again, depending on how your life has been shaped by your experiences. And some people call it toxic positivity, like all this is going on. And you're like, well, what about this? You should be grateful for this. And maybe that comes across as toxic positivity. That's something I haven't dug into the definitions of, because I kind of roll my eyes when I see that phrase, but maybe that's a topic in the future. Some people call it toxic positivity. I call it deciding where to point my magnifying glass, what I'm going to magnify. So if you saw my graphic for today's episode, it was like a film negative with a lens or magnifying, actually looked in the picture, it looks more like a jeweler's loupe, but still magnifying. And that was kind of the point there, that what we get is what we focus on. So while others may call it toxic positivity, I call it choosing where I'm pointing that magnifying lens. Okay. But this is why gratitude journals and blessing boxes and things like that work. Let me just show you, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in a minute. This is my gratitude box, my blessings box. I've been doing this for a few years now. It's got a lot in that. I have to keep shoving papers down because I still have half a year to go. But anyway, that's why these things work. They work because they're redirecting your focus. And asking your loved ones, including your kids, when you're sitting and having dinner at the table and everybody's venting about their day, and I've been known to do it. I've been known to have people do it to me as well. If the vent gets into a rant and then the question becomes, what's a good thing that happened today? Did anything good happen today? Tell me about something great that happened today. And that's especially important for kids because we get focused on what happened today, how was your day, instead of more specific things that force them to look at the day differently, force us to look at the day differently. So questions like, tell me something good about your day. It's not magic. It's redirection. It just changes what we're paying attention to, and it changes what we magnify. So to be clear, gratitude doesn't ignore the hard things. The hard things don't go away because we're more grateful. And I'm never going to say be grateful for the hard thing. Although I've personally learned there is in fact a lesson in everything. And as I grow in my faith, I have found that I can often see God working in every situation, even if it's an ugly one. So gratitude doesn't ignore the things. I recently heard and read that, and this is related to that whole toxic positivity thing. I've recently heard and read that you can't be frustrated and grateful. You can't be disappointed and grateful. You can't be grieving or struggling and grateful at the same time. And I call BS. I absolutely call BS, because I have hit my knees in the living room over a situation that just had me completely just sidelined. And I have been grateful for the opportunity to look at it different and to look for the positives in it. So I can be devastated and grateful at the same time. And I will die on that hill with anybody that wants to talk about it. So different perspective. Gratitude is a different perspective with a profound impact, profound ripples. And like I said, as I grow in my faith, my gratitude grows too. Do you need to believe in what I believe in for that to happen? Absolutely not. Because if you look at almost any belief system, gratitude is at the heart of it. And that's important for people to know. So whatever your belief system is, gratitude can be a game changer. So one started the other, and that gratitude is where it started. And now they feed each other. My gratitude and my faith, they feed each other, and they're coming from the same place. So whatever your beliefs are, whatever lane you're living in that department, gratitude can be at the heart of it, and it can be a game changer for you, and for the people around you, and for the kids that are listening and watching. It's definitely shifted my focus. For sure, it's shifted my focus. Again, that's where it started. But because of that gratitude, because of learning to be grateful for what was going on in the moment, what was going on in front of me, that is when my destination preoccupation started traveling its way out the door. Because when I became more grateful for what was in front of me, I stopped looking outside of the moment for gratification. Does that make sense? I know I'm not supposed to say that phrase either, but sometimes things make sense in my head and don't make sense when they come out of my mouth. So that's why I asked that question. So one started the other, and now they feed each other. And it's definitely shifted my focus on everything. And it doesn't always change my circumstances. In fact, a lot of the times it doesn't. But it always changes the way I view my circumstances. And that is the best start to changing them. The choice is yours. It's not always easy to choose positivity or happiness. Yes, that's the bottom line. We have a choice. And I do believe that finding that gratitude and finding those bright spots changes how we choose. It has for me. So what about the kids? Because I started out talking about kids, right? So you're probably like, okay, she started out talking about kids in summer break. Now she's talking about adults. Where does this fit in? Well, again, I can't stress enough. They're watching and they're listening. They hear what we complain about, what we notice, what we focus on, and they pay attention to what we celebrate. We can't teach gratitude or perspective. We can't teach it to them, and we can't teach it to ourselves. Perspective is something that comes with experience and maturity. But gratitude is a skill that we can build and that we can show them how to build. And a lot of times that, again, is through modeling. Though gratitude and perspective both are things that come from decision, they come from practice, and they come from modeling. Y'all, I've talked about this before. When I was in the process of my divorce, I was 28 years old, and that was when I was first diagnosed with what was at the time referred to by my counselor as functional anxiety and depression. Functional meaning I had lived with it for so long, I believed it was part of my personality, and it looked like it was just the way I was wired. But y'all, that wasn't the way I was wired. I have been able to very slowly rewire myself, and newer research on neuroplasticity, if you haven't heard that, proves that we can rewire ourselves. So before I knew what I was doing it because I was changing what I was focusing on. I was trying to improve myself and trying to do better and trying to experience life differently because of examples I saw in other people that I wanted to be more like. So we model even as adults, we continue to learn by modeling others' behavior. So again, we can't teach gratitude. We can't teach perspective. Those are things that come with a decision and then practice and modeling other people that show us that, and then modeling that for the other people around us, including the kids that see us and interact with us. So we can ask questions. We can also ask questions besides the making the decision and the practicing. We can ask important questions like, what is a good thing that happened to you today? What made you smile today? What are you looking forward today for morning conversations? And who helped you today? These are ways that we can ask. These are simple ways that we can look at our kids, whether they've been at school, whether they've been at summer camp, whether they've been at the local Boys and Girls Club, whatever, and we can change what they're focusing on right out of the gate, just by asking different questions. We can also talk about and use things like gratitude journals, gratitude boxes, conversations. In fact, I have here in my notes, I want to talk about it a little, just real quick. This might be a great summer project with your kids. I don't care how old they are. It might be a great summer project for you as an adult. For a loved one of mine, I am in the process of putting together a blessings box. Now, mine's not that exciting, right? I started with a tiny little container that somebody gifted me, and it wasn't big enough. So I found this in my pantry years ago and started using this because I was like, that'll work. Because then I can see them and I can see the box filling up. And what I do is I keep this cube of paper next to it. And every day, and some days I miss, some days I forget. Every day I try to sit down with this cube of paper and I write the date in the corner, and I write something good about today. And sometimes it's just a few words. It's not descriptive. It's just a few words to refer to something specific. And then at the end of each year, I try to go through it and read about all the amazing things that happened. And you don't have to wait till the end of the year. If you're having a rough day, you can go through your box or your container or whatever, or your gratitude journal that you've been writing, and you can just go back over those things to remind yourself. This is basically an evidence file, and I've talked about those before too. An evidence file, so that your brain has evidence that there are great things, that there are good things, that there are things to look forward to instead of negative things to focus on. So for a loved one, and also for a prize in my VIP group, because I have something going on in there, and it is a private group. So if you want to know more, send me a message. I am working on a gratitude box, kind of personalized for that individual, kind of personalized, maybe a little bit. And it's not fancy. It's going to be a box with a photo on top with pens and a cube of paper. But it's a great thing to get somebody started. Okay. And I think it's really important. And I think this is easily, I haven't been there yet, that Hobby Lobby has like plywood boxes with a slot in the top, in the lid for a photo, which means you can leave them plain, or you can paint them whatever color you want or whatever. You can get really creative here, and it might be a really cool summer project regardless of the age of your kids, or just something for you to do for yourself. So again, blessings journals, conversations, that's how we begin the gratitude hunt, if you will. And the more we look for things to be grateful for, the more we're going to find, and the less time and ability we're going to have to focus on the negative. So my challenge to you this week is that every single day, find one good thing, write it down, whether it goes in a box or it goes in a notebook or it just goes on a Post-it note next to your desk. Write it down, or share it with somebody, text it to somebody, message me and say, hey, all this went on today, but here's the really good, cool thing that happened. Share it, write it down, practice it. Because remember, the lens itself that we're looking at stuff through is not negative or positive. I mean, yeah, we've got sometimes a slant based on our own experiences, but the lens simply focuses on wherever we point it. What we focus on is what we find, and we can build skills like gratitude with what we practice, or we can build skills like identifying negative things and being cranky. And I'm a walking example of that. You may not have seen it, because obviously I would have never started Wellness Wednesday if I wanted to just get on live and complain about things, right? But I'm a walking example of what a huge difference the simple practice of making the decision to find gratitude in things can make. And both kids and adults can learn that behavior from us more than they can learn from our words. Or as much as they can. Both are still important. Words and actions are both still important. At the end of the day, ooh, that's another phrase I'm not supposed to say. At the end of the day, it is our actions and our patterns and our behaviors that teach everyone around us about us and about how to receive or not receive life. Because believe me, I've learned plenty of things about what not to do from people in my life. So the choice, as Danielle put it, is yours. But it does require a choice, and it does require practice. So is it possible, back to the question that started this, is it possible to get good at being unhappy? Yeah, absolutely. We can spend years training ourselves to focus on what's wrong and what's missing and what's not fair. But we can also train ourselves, if we can do that, we can also train ourselves to notice what's good and what's kind and what's helpful. So my question is for you today, we already talked about the challenge. What is good for you today? I want to hear what's good for you today. Whatever time of the day you see this, whatever time of the day you remember the question, drop it in the comments, send me a message, announce it on your own Facebook page and tag me. I would love that. What is good for you today? Good. I just watched Bruce Almighty recently, so good. Because what you focus on is what you're going to find. And what we focus on is also what we project to others, including the kids around us. So I hope you found this helpful today. If you found this helpful, please share it, because I think that we forget how much we as adults kind of beat ourselves down with negativity and comparison and all that. and what kind of an example, and we never get to the point of thinking what kind of an example that sets for the children around us, whether it's nieces, nephews, kids, grandkids, whatever. So I'm going to drop a couple links in the comments, previous videos I've done. If they're still on Facebook, there'll be Facebook links, talking about the words episode where I talked about why words matter, last week's episode, and then maybe a couple other from previous gratitude discussions from my YouTube channel, just in case you get a chance to watch. But all episodes are on YouTube, and Facebook holds lives for 30 days. So it will be here when you're ready to come back to it if you need to listen again, or if you just want to share it. Or go check everything out on YouTube. And between now and next Wednesday, find the good, find something good, write it down, share it, practice it. Let me know about it. Let me know how that works for you. And between now and Wednesday, I hope you have a fabulous week and be well.